Jim Cramer joins me on the floor of the NYSE. I'm Catherine Ross of TheStreet. All right, Jim, it's a busy day for Wall Street.
First, I want to compliment you. It's been just great working with you, and I just wanted to tell you that. I know
Thank
there's Kenny Polcari said the same thing to me, that you interview him after, and I think that people should get praise and not just from, get credit and not just behind the scenes. Okay?
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
Giving you credit did not cost me anything.
I'm glad to hear that. Hey, so did you see, we had the Kim Jong-un meeting with Trump.
Right.
Do you think that has the potential to move U.S. equities?
Well, I think that, no, not really. I'll tell you why. Because what's happened is that he denuclearized, the testing's done. The plan, as I now see it, is to have North Korea to become part of the Council of Nations and be a trading power. And I think the problem there is that they have no infrastructure, whatever. It's Trump making claims that will not be able to be backed up by the North Korean people. It changes the dialogue, less about nuclear, more about trade. But I will say this, if you bring them in to trade, then you could have a new Vietnamization. Those who are old enough to remember what Nixon meant by that, take that off the table. So it makes sense from the point of view of a long game of how to make North Korea become less bellicose. But it's not overnight because the country does not have the infrastructure to be a power. When I was in Germany, when East Germany became part of West Germany, it was amazing how even though East Germany was the showcase for the entire communist world, it was so behind. And East Germany is a heck of a lot better than North Korea.
We've got more political headlines. In fact, actually, Michael Cohen is trying to steal our thunder.
So my wife wakes up this morning, which she never does when I'm there. And maybe that's because Xilinx is in obedience school for eating so many ballpoint pens. But she said, I hope you talk about Michael Cohen today. I mean, it was like, she's never said a thing about the show, a thing about what I do for a living, and, didn't say good morning. Just, I hope you talk about Michael Cohen today. And I said, why? She goes, did you see the explosive testimony? I said, well, do you think it'll change Senator McConnell's view? And she said, no. I said, do you think it'll change anyone or any Republican in the House view? No. I said, go back to bed.
Do you think it's just going to be a distraction for the markets?
I think that there are people who genuinely are concerned that there will be people calling for impeachment after Cohen because of the check, because of what he says. Then there'll be other people, notably the Republicans, who'll say, look, the guy's a convicted felon. It really doesn't matter what he says. But what matters in all these cases is what does the Senate think? Because the Senate is where they try impeachment cases, and you don't bring an impeachment if you're going to lose. So, they've done it, Republicans have done it, but I just think that it's part of the mix. But I defer to my colleague David Faber, who said the Lighthizer testimony could be the most important, because he's a harder liner than the president, it seems, and maybe there's some distance between them. He's negotiating. So I find that you have Powell, you have Lighthizer, and you have Cohen. And when I find that you have so many, and of Trump in North Korea, when you have so many dazzling events, people just say, maybe I'll take a little off the table because it's a little crazy. That's how they view it. It's like a little crazy because they can't process. We just don't have a cortex that can process it. And, your cortex is really taxed here. And your medulla oblongata is taxed. So I think that people are just going to say, whoa, I'm reluctant until this day's over to see how the day plays out. And I totally get that. It's kind of like the delayed reaction. Remember I told you there'd be downgrades at Home Depot, and Home Depot will be down today and you buy it? I think that today's one of those days where it's going to be down, and then the next day you buy it. Because by that point we would have said, well, wait a second, Cohen, nobody changed their mind. Lighthizer, well, what else is new there? Powell, he said the same thing yesterday. The president, well, he's trying to make deals to sell North Koreans washing machines. Buy Whirlpool.
Well, okay, so that actually gives me a really interesting question, because I'm wondering, we've got Powell, we've got Cohen, we've got the Trump meeting with Kim Jong-un.
Is your head exploding from that? Come on.
Okay, so my head is exploding,
right?
But is everyone's head exploding?
I have indomethacin, it's a migraine drug. All right.
Investors might need that after
Yes,
today.
exactly.
So I'm wondering, should everyone's head be kind of exploding, or should they just kind of ignore this?
No, we can't. I'll tell you why we can't. Because you have to check off all boxes. I mean, if there is a wild card, and you ignore it, that could hurt you. I mean, unless you're not a trader. Traders have to worry. Investors, no. You can take the Warren Buffett page. Now, we didn't get to talk enough about Warren Buffett, and I think it's interesting that he's satisfied with Wells Fargo. He's satisfied with Coca-Cola. And satisfied somewhat with Kraft Heinz, not that much. And
enough not to sell.
No, and I think that, maybe he shouldn't be so satisfied. Maybe he shouldn't be. I mean, maybe he should say that Wells has to do better. They got another ruling as to they're not a favored bank. And maybe he should say that Coca-Cola should be better than Pepsi. I mean, that would be constructive. Like, why not be constructive about it? I mean, you can be very constructive about what needs to happen. He was on the defense about Kraft Heinz, and Campbell's Soup is up today. Campbell's, because I think that what they're doing is cleaning the house, selling some things, integrating Lance Snyder. But I do think that when I go over, again, in light of what Campbell's saying today and what I keep reading about Kraft Heinz, that it would have been okay if he had been constructively more critical. It was time. It was time to be constructively more critical.
Interesting.
Nobody, I happen to like very much James Quincy, but Coca-Cola did not deliver a good quarter. I think that there's some changes that are good at Wells Fargo, but Wells Fargo, it's not been good. So I only bring this up because I think about the quarter, and then people say, Jim, you're criticizing the great one. No. I'm saying that he could be constructive. Because obviously the things he owns are doing great. Burlington Northern, fantastic. GEICO's amazing. He always talks about how GEICO's really well run. I thought he was going to talk about the retrospective GEICO commercials. But in light of what I'm seeing in the marketplace, it might have been a good time to be a little more like we do with Action Alerts, which is not something, but where we criticize ourselves. How about if he had said, I've stuck with Coca-Cola for a long time, and while they bought back a lot of stock, I don't think that they're necessarily doing the right thing. Maybe they should be expanding in this. But he beats himself up a lot. That's okay. But IBM was missed. Apple, should he have sold it? Well, he's owning it, not trading it. I respect that. But I don't know. I've just been trying to be within the context of loving what the man does, trying to understand the notion of not being critical of a Coke, and not being critical of a Wells. It's bothersome. It's ill-advised. But you can do it. I mean, he's the best there is. But he could really help those companies, is what I'm saying. He could help them.
So you mentioned Action Alerts Plus. You've also praised me. So I feel like it's the only time that I praise you for Palo Alto.
Nah, I'm a jerk. Quote that. Like, just, yeah, Cramer admits, whoa, Jon Stewart's right, whatever that guy, yeah, and his confessions, he says he's in it. Okay, so Palo Alto was an exercise in how to deal with a bear market, and we had a bear market in the month of December. It was a mini bear market, we're calling it. And if you believe, and the company is not connected with what's declining, which was what the points we're making in the Action Alerts conference call, then you use the weakness to buy, not sell. And there was nothing about Palo Alto that should have, about its business, not the stock, that should have led to the decline it had. And I always say use a market-wide decline to buy stocks that have nothing to do, or I often say not in the epicenter of the decline, which was the financials, by the way, and then some of the Chinese international stocks. And what a great opportunity, because Palo Alto, if anything, what we were really worried about was espionage. So Palo Alto was right, and I had done, Nikesh Arora had bought millions of dollars worth of stock. I had met with Nikesh before this. I had tremendous respect for him for what he accomplished at Google, the conference of SoftBank. The secular trends, unfortunately, in favor of cyber crime are only increasing. And there was no reason to think, well, why that shouldn't be the stock you buy in the bear market. And we did it. It reported this morning, and it was a monster blowout. I mean, really probably the biggest blowout of the year so far, other than maybe CyberArk, which I have on tonight. But and it worked, and it was just commonsensical. And I'm just trying to emphasize to people, you too can use the bear market to your advantage.
And I want to point out for viewers who might not have seen it, but you had a February Action Alerts Plus call where you spent a good 25 minutes discussing Palo Alto.
I remember I beat myself up saying, okay, I've talked too much about Palo Alto, but I was trying to make a point, which is, I think you can do word and deed. We were backing it both. We were buying, and we were talking about word, which is that why. And I know I went on too long, but it was the rules in play. I went over all of the rules that made it so that we had a great investment. And I want people to go back. No one ever sneezes on TV. I want people to go back and look at that because it's rules-based and it's educational. And I think it really was done in real time where I knew I took my life in my hands. But in reality, I didn't because I knew Nikesh, I knew Palo Alto, I knew Mark McLaughlin before him, I knew the customers, I knew the threats, I knew the ecosystem he's building, I knew he's going SaaS, I knew the acquisitions. Jeff and Zev knew it even colder than I did. And I just look at the situation, I say, it's not a eureka moment, it's a teaching moment. And so I would like people to go back to that. And I know, I'm sorry I bored people, but I bored people into buying Palo Alto.
And you can find that.
Day, you know?
Yeah, and you can find it on actionalertsplus.com. Now, there's one thing that I want to bring up to you because as you were leaving the Street's office, I heard you say that you wanted to talk about cannabis.
Yeah,
and that you wanted more
Larry
cannabis.
Bossidy. I've been up and down. Larry, I'm down and up. Larry, when he was at Honeywell, I criticized him for the asbestos liability, which he had, of course, nothing to do with it. He acquired the company. He dealt with it, as, of course, did Dave Cote. But he's the master, Larry, and he's so wise, and he's very critical of himself, too. But he said it's time, he's trading cannabis, and there couldn't be something more true. You have to trade Kronos. I mean, we got more positive in the low teens, and then it goes to 20, and that's terrific. And a lot of that is Kronos CEO just beating my head. Listen, Altria. If you like the Constellation Canopy, and we, of course, had Bruce Linton at our teach-in, I know that a lot of people want me to talk about all, T-God, and they want me to talk about all of them and recommend all of them. And my problem with that is, I made this point in the tweet, you can't recommend them all. I can't know them all. But I thought that Larry was right on top of his game when he said, look, you've got to be flexible. The stocks go up, you sell, stocks go down, you buy. And look, we had a down day today, and it could be because of all the stuff we talked about at the top. But, that's when you look for cannabis. You should be like, ooh, it's coming in. People want me to upgrade Constellation. I mean, he sold Constellation much, much higher. You might want to upgrade Constellation when Canopy Growth is half its value because they've got majority control.
And what about this Aurora deal with the Portuguese cannabis company? They took a 51% stake as they expand their business in Europe.
I was looking at that, and then I said, wait a second, I got GW Pharma on tonight. Let's get serious. GW Pharma is important because it's about dosing. See, you can't get adequate dosing if you just use regular cannabis. So let's say or THC cannabis, let's say that you needed it, cannabis, that there was a certain amount of cannabis that would stop epilepsy and cut back seizures. Well, you have to have that certain amount, and the companies that make CBD right now are too impure, but GW Pharma isn't with its Epidiolex, and so that's why GW Pharma is doing so well. They can dose it, and it's cannabis, and they can it's manufactured cannabis. But when you look at why GW Pharma hit an all-time high today, it's because when you see a doctor, because you have, say, pain, and you want to not have opiates, they're very reluctant to give you a prescription for cannabis, but cannabinoid, Epidiolex. Now, Epidiolex, unfortunately, is really just it's got some Dravet syndrome and is testing, but they've got it for severe form of epilepsy. They can't just do off-label. There's a lot of people who want them to do off-label because maybe they can do it surreptitiously, I don't know. But you can't just, if you go to the Bruce Linton site, if you go to the Canopy site, you'll see that they have inexact amounts. And obviously, if you're a doctor, can you imagine saying, listen, I want you to take, I did that, the thing with indomethacin, which is a migraine drug. Well, you know what, you should take 150, but you can take 300. It's not like that. I'll titrate you off at 300, but yesterday it took 250. I take a drug called, I take a drug that is, it's called Lyrica, okay? And it costs a lot of money because it's still coming on patent, or at least they're charging me a lot. And Lyrica, if you take 150, for most people, it's for pain, for nerve pain. That's fine. If you take 200, it might be too much. So, what are you going to do? They can't regulate for pain regular CBD, but they can with GW Pharma. So GW Pharma may be more of the future for medical than Bruce Linton says. He says medical. Remember, he's doing the medical for Canopy. He's given the food stuff and beverages to Constellation. So just be aware, GW Pharma is up because of dosing. Okay, because of dosing.
Interesting. Now, before I let you go,
Pfizer has that Lyrica. They never market it correctly. They market it on those shows, and it's just like, it's like you should take Lyrica because it's good for nerve pain. But if you have this, and this, and you do this, and you do that, then it may not be right for you. And
those commercials give me anxiety.
They really do. Like, for instance, I run a bar. I run Bar San Miguel. My wife is a co-owner of Longshoreman. If you have 3 mezcals, you can barely walk. I was always good for 3 mezcals per Lyrica, but Lyrica is a wonder drug. But if you dose that incorrectly, holy cow! And it also puts on weight. That's a little more than you need to know.
I mean, we hear it all in the commercials.
Diet because of it. Oh no, I know. I mean, there's so many drugs. I was thinking about yesterday. I had a really terrific interview with Charles River Labs, and 85% of the new drugs, of the 53 new drugs that were approved last year, 85% of them they were doing the work on, because none of these drug companies can really do the work. They offload it to Charles River, which is, by the way, if you dial 1-800-LAB-RAT, I'm not kidding, 1-800-LAB-RAT. That gets you to Charles River, because they have the rats that you need to test things on. Wild, huh?
That's a fun fact.
Isn't that? Yeah, there's something. But yesterday, one of my favorite CEOs, Ken Frazier, was talking on the Hill about Merck, and he said, "Here's what we do: we invent drugs." And you know what? To invent a drug is one thing, but to actually get the drug to be approved is another, and you need 1-800-LAB-RAT to get it approved. But I think Charles River Labs at $7 billion market cap is radically undervalued. It's been an amazing stock. It's up 75% since we recommended it. That Jim Foster, that company's worth, I think, far more than people realize. It's not worth necessarily what GE sold to Danaher, which is a big favorite of ours in Action Alerts, but it's certainly worth more than it's trading.
Now, we got to switch over to Action Alerts Plus, because I want to talk to you more about Palo Alto and go into their spreadsheet.
Of course.
But before I let you go, I did have a really interesting interview this morning where I talked to Zega Financial's founder, Zega Financial.
Okay.
And we were talking about hedging and why investors should know about hedging, which is something that I think is very important.
Using options? What did you suggest?
Using options and using the VIX to foretell how a stock will react to certain news. But I want to ask you, as also an expert, what's your investor tip of the day?
Well, alleged expert. Oh, there he goes again. Okay, I'm going to give you an educational tip of the day. I'm glad you mentioned that, because maybe we should do educational tips of the day. Run them on Alexa. Okay, Alexa, Siri. I mean, if you say serious, the word serious, she's engaged, Siri, and it went off during my show. I said, you can't be serious. It's like, how can I help you? Okay, here's my educational tip of the day. People at home, if you want to hedge, go into cash. If you want to hedge, raise cash. It is too hard to match options with your portfolio. If you are nervous, just raise cash. If you're really nervous, you can raise a huge amount of cash. That's your hedge. Raising cash is the hedge. My tip of the day.
There we go. All right, we're going to switch over.
You can't be serious. I'm serious.
We're going to switch over to Action Alerts Plus, where he's going to get very serious about Palo Alto.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us, guys, and thanks for all of your insight, Jim.